here's how it goes. It's 1958. I've been out of I got discharged from the Air Force. Ended up in Marin County. Was going to go to College Marin. I was on the GI Bill, and I was living in a one-room apartment on Bank Street in Santa Summer. I was paying rent, living upstairs. Had a hot plate. That's in college, whose dad was a volunteer in Larkspur, a gentleman by the name of Frank Avansco. He owned a local plumbing outfit. And she mentioned to me about this program at Larkspur where they took young guys in that wanted to be volunteers and help. So I went down and spoke with John Raggio. John was the chief at the time. Introduced myself to him, told him who I was. I was 20 years old. Yeah, I was 20 years old at the time. And when I met with John, all the rooms were full except there was a guy going to get married, a guy by the name of Art Wiedemeyer. Art was getting married. He had his own bedroom. Art was a fireman at Treasure Island at the time. And so he says, Chief offered me a GI cot to sleep in what was the family kitchen, which was no longer being used. It was basically for storage. And I grabbed, absolutely, I put my head in the oven if I had to, so to speak. And so I slept on the cot for a couple, 2 or 3 months until Art got married. And then I moved into his room. And in those days, here's how it worked. There were 3 paid guys, a fire chief who worked an 8-hour day and 2 24-hour firefighters. And in those days, we worked a 72-hour work week. And on Saturday afternoon, the paid guys would go home and then turn it over to the fire defenses would be turned over to sleepers.
Okay.
We responded on that rig that's behind me, that 54 Jimmy. So from noon on Saturdays till 7 o'clock on Mondays, the sleepers with very little experience and training were in charge of the Larkspur's fire defenses. And so there was not a lot of training at the time. I mean, when you can see a single live line and a 24-foot Sears and Roebuck ladder, that's what it was. And we had a resuscitator between the doors. So with time, it went on, and my plan was to go back to school and be a teacher. I was going to be a history teacher.
Okay.
So all of a sudden, I started to, I thought, well, this is pretty cool. So I fell into it, but it was an experience that I do not regret it. Absolutely. I mean, you want a job? Yeah. And I took the job and no longer was a sleeper. But one of the rules was if you were in the firehouse at the time, you had to respond.
Okay.
So there's one guy on duty. So if there was 2 of us, we could jump in the seat. As people bought homes, they've upgraded them, put sheetrock in, changed the electricity. So, but in those first 4 or 5 years, as a sleeper and a bayman, we went to a lot of working structure fires. So, but as a sleeper, I always look back on and say, wow, they turned over the fire defenses for the community to 19 and 20-year-old kids there was no training, there was no school, no college, no books to even look at to speak of. The only thing, that's how it all started. And in my time, here's some of the people who came through the sleeper program at Larkspur. Chief Craig Schertz,
okay,
recently passed. He was a sleeper. He became chief. Matt Gustafson, who's at the Skywalker Ranch and now the fire marshal, assistant chief in Windsor. Pat Williams, captain in San Anselmo. Bob Sennett, a sleeper. Tom Forrester, Skywalker Ranch. Jim Busher, who was a Skywalker, went back to Louisville, Kentucky. Became a fire investigator, full-time police officer, fire investigator back in Kentucky. So we had a lot of people come through our sleeper program. And I know Kenfield had a very active one also because they really lived in. And they weren't being called a lot. They didn't get any money or anything like that. None of us got paid. There was no paid for drills, and you had to go to drills Every Tuesday there was a drill, and on Saturday mornings the sleepers had their own training.
Okay.
So on Saturday morning we would train, and but other than that, it was a wonderful experience. That's pretty much what happened to sleeper programs. I don't know if anyone maybe you do. I don't know if anyone else in the county still has a remote sleeper program.
Yeah, it's very interesting because the community members back when you were a young guy and I was a young guy, we got a lot of our sleepers from two places. One, community members, young guys in town, and the second was you mentioned it, Bill, the fire science program at College of Marin.
Yeah,
that was a real draw for the guys and a few gals that became firefighters. They really were into it, and this was an excellent. If to allude to your comments earlier on the job training. Yeah, it really was an apprenticeship. It was on the job training day and night, and you, like you mentioned, the level of responsibility that you were required of as a sleeper was pretty significant. I mean, you and another fella or two had the town for the weekend.
Yeah, we could run those. We'd crawl underneath those and clean them, and crawl underneath the squad and clean them. And after, it was a lot of fun being a sleeper. It was like a little college dormitory in a way. You know what I mean? All young guys, all single, and we all go along great. And it was just it was amazing how many. And it was a great way to get a job. If you were a sleeper, you had a heads up on. A sleeper one moment, the next thing you're paid that. Yeah.
Right. I see the irony here from caught in the kitchen to fire chief, and those two actual rooms were still not that far apart. Well, I'd like to thank Chief Lellis for joining us today. Great story, great career, and it's a lot of fun because in our sleeper program interviews, that is the one reoccurring theme is these folks back in the 60s, back in the 70s, they got a lot out of it. They had a lot of fun and a lot of camaraderie. So
I started at Kent Field in 1977, July 1977, like 3 weeks before my 18th birthday. And I was there as a sleeper as well. And that was after I had done a stint as they called the program back then, they called it the CETA, and it was a Comprehensive and Training Act, Comprehensive Employment and Training Act. I think it was one of the things that Richard Nixon actually put into place to help people get on with getting career. I was very fortunate to end up at Kent Field Fire Department after I had finished a 18-month regional occupation program in small engine repair and motorcycles, and they thought it would be a good idea for me to get in the fire department because you had stuff to fix. So that's pretty much how I started, and I can remember my first interview with the day that I came in there at the fire station with Kenny Camp, Chief Kenny Camp, and Bob Mariani, who was the assistant chief at the time. I was like 17-year-old kid, had no clue about what I was doing. And the next thing I knew, I was working in a fire station.
How about that?
Yeah, it was a pretty cool thing. And it started something in motion that I ended up really getting the bug. And I really enjoyed the training I was getting.
Well, let's go back 35, 40 years, and we can talk for a little bit about your experience as a sleeper there, and kind of how did that experience prepare you for a career in the fire service, or for a career starting to think about going to CAL FIRE, CDF back then, and how did that kind of tie together for you?
Well, I kind of knew how to work hard, but I wasn't the most hardworking person at the time. And then when I got there, it was those people like that were supervising me and point me in the right direction. They had expectations. And I think the biggest thing that it prepared me was that you had to know your shit. And I was really impressed on that. It was pretty easy for me because all you had to do was show me how to do something, tell me I was doing it right, and then I could move on from there. And that's how it all started. It's like it built my confidence being a firefighter. And I wasn't really sure I could do anything like this. And then all of a sudden, I can remember the times loading hose and having water splash in my face and all kinds of crazy stuff and all the little jokes and that about the young kids. And it really helped me to get pointed in the right direction. Really, I think that was a big thing back when I first started.
I remember you as a young sleeper, 17, 18, 19 years old, and we used to train on Tuesday nights.
Yeah,
you were volunteer. You did. We all did. And then occasionally we would have Saturday drills and focus on some of the sleepers. And I think, what we were trying to do at the time for our Kentfield sleepers was kind of hone them. I don't want to say a step up, but they were with us 24 hours, when they come in the evening. So we had a sleeper with us. And we really appreciated having the extra hands. And we knew if we trained you well, when we went on the scene, you were pretty well dialed. We hoped you were pretty well dialed. And I remember we were out on a sleeper drill, and Bob Mariani was our company officer, and he kept calling for, make the hydrant, break the hose, supply the engine. And the guys, for whatever reason, were all thumbs. I mean, they just struggled and, somebody would drop something and drop the ball. Well, you were on that crew and you and those guys got it so dialed. I think that night or the night after, we had a working structure fire and the sleepers and the crew came together because of that training. Maybe you remember the fire, and you look like you've been doing it for years. So that kind of training, how did that kind of training and learning how to work with other people evolve in CAL FIRE when you went to work for them? How did that help you?
Well, working as a crew was that was something new for me. But it was very clear on what needed to be done and why we had to do it. So yeah, if you were making a hydrant, you needed to make that hydrant because there was people going interior or doing a search and you needed to make sure. So it was kind of a backup. The way I looked at it was like I had to do my job because that was the evolution.
Right.
And it was very cut and dry and there was time. So I think that really what that did was really got me it got me to the point where I could look at things, what's next? Where am I going? Why are we doing this? I pretty much knew we needed, all those steps of the evolution were very important. And I think there was a kind of a little bit of urgency too, because we were all like watching each other and there was a little scrutinizing going on. And I think that's really a positive thing, and it kind of gets you juices. It gets that adrenaline flowing, and I think that's something that you have to really tap into for as being a fireman. You need to embrace that excitement and that adrenaline, and really focus it forward.
How did that success at Kentfield? Because I knew you as a sleeper there, and then. We followed each other's careers as you went to CAL FIRE and I stayed at Kentfield. How did the success as a sleeper translate into your success in life?
For me, I just tell you, for me, it was probably the most important thing that ever really happened. And I was very fortunate to have that opportunity because I really at the time had no. Paul, I wanted to be a motorcycle mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I would have been a good one, but I ended up being a fireman, and the only reason that happened was because I was put in the environment there at Kentfield Fire District with, and they had a great association of the association, Kentfield Associated Firefighters. I think it was called Firefighter, I can't remember. And I had a lot of people that were showing me the way. So I think for me personally, it was probably one of the most important things that happened to me. I grew up, I didn't grow up in a traditional setting. I kind of had a lot of things happen to me when I was young, and in my family, all my family was in the military. None of them survived that. So I didn't really have a lot of people, in particular men, that were showing me how to be a young man.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was one of the things that was really big. Is like I learned how to get along with people being at Kentfield Fire Department. I mean, I think I may have picked up a few bad traits, but generally I think most of the stuff was very positive, and I'm very proud to this day that I had a tenure there, and I still consider myself a Kentfield fireman to this day. I always say that, and I've even had sometimes when I've been in seminars or classes where, you know, they ask your history, and I've said Kentfield Fire Department, and you'd be surprised the amount of people that will look at you a little different just because you're from there. Sometimes in a good way, and sometimes maybe not the best way, but it was always you were a respected firefighter. You have to know about a lot of different things and be very versed in a lot of different ideas. So I think it was probably the best thing I can say is it really developed me into being a decent young man.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's so many distractions out there, but I've always been able to go back to the core of being part of a team, having a purpose, and believing in myself, and believing that other people really can help me attain what I want. And I think that's probably what I really learned was like, and that's why I'll always love that place, is because it definitely changed me for the better in so many ways. I wouldn't be where I am right now, having a highball at 2:00 in the afternoon, retired, if it wasn't for you guys. And I mean, that's a fact. There's no getting around that. It wasn't me. I put the work in, but you guys got me started in the right direction. And you guys taught me some things about, you know, not ways to not go.
Right. And you know,
I really am indebted to that. And please let me know if I could ever be of assistance to KFD.
Yeah, my experiences started when I was 17 years old. My family had moved to Terra Linda from San Francisco, and my mom and dad were both commuters and worked different hours. So as part of my family, my job, one of my jobs was to drive my mom to 101 so she could catch her bus ride to the city every morning. So by doing that, my dad allowed me to purchase a 56 Chevy Nomad wagon as part of a father-son project before I was supposed to have a driver's license. And one day on my way home early morning, I was pulled over by Chief Walzer, who at the time was the fire chief and constable for the unincorporated area of Terra Linda. I had a non-working taillights, and he pulled me over, asked me for documentation, which I didn't have, a driver's license, which I didn't have. So consequently, he drove me home. advised me to give my dad his phone number to come pick up the car when my dad got home from work. And if he saw that vehicle leave the parked area that it was left at before high school started, he was going to come to the high school, find me, and obviously juvenile hall was nearby in Lucas Valley, so that was his alternative place for juveniles, as his wife worked at juvenile hall as a counselor. As part of that whole deal, he made a deal with my dad to have me do some community service time on the following Saturday. With that, to bring my 56 Chevy wagon down and have one of the paid staff guys help me to make sure that my taillights worked properly. So I spent the time, did my community service time on a Saturday, and really never left from that point on. The firehouse was always a safe harbor, good friendships, and being that it was a couple of blocks away from my house, very easy to get to, had a lot of good things. You know, where else can you go to be 17 years old and play with big toys, have toolboxes, have friends, have, pool tables, ping pong tables, pretty much a club. Chief Walser always opened up avenues, either through friends, other fire departments, or military, for people to be trained. That they had a real interest. He would try to work something in for you.
He sounds like he was very supportive of not only his paid staff, but young folks like you that, obviously showed some competency and wanted to move forward. Now, Ed, what was the routine like as a sleeper in Terra Linda? Did they have regular bunk room? Did you bunk with the paid guys? You mentioned before there wasn't a real schedule, but is it kind of a drop by thing, or what did you guys, what did Chief require or request of you folks?
Well, the sleeping situation, the Terra Linda Fire Station was built by volunteers, a lot of the labor. If I recall right, we had 4 bunks, or 2 bunk beds and maybe 2 regular beds. So it had sleeping capacity for probably 4 to 6 people. On top of that, we had a pool table and a ping pong table and a couch outside of the living area that certainly slept some folks at some point in times. It wasn't unusual. For me, I was the relief firefighter when I became a paid guy, and I worked Saturdays and I believe every other Sunday. And it wasn't unusual for me to wake up on a Sunday morning and find a couple people asleep on the couches and stuff.
What you're saying, it sounds like, is similar to kind of what we had at Kentfield. Some of the guys, as you mentioned, had a regular full-time day job, whether it was in construction or automotive or whatever they were doing, and they would eat and bunk at the firehouse, and that was their home for a couple of years until they figured they either got a job in the fire service or they figured maybe that's not for them and they went another way.
I think that is a pretty much a good analogy.
Everybody has a different culture in their fire station, but to a man, everybody who we've talked to, they really, really enjoyed what they got out of. They put a lot of things into the fire service, but they enjoyed what they got out of it. So I think you've had a similar experience, because Ed, it sounds like, you fell in love with this fire service thing. I call it, when you were 18 years old, got a full-time job and never looked back. So is there anything you like to add on how that experience at Terra Linda maybe shaped your career?
Well, certainly, being brought in a volunteer environment definitely gave me some hindsight as a paid staff member for Marin County, how to treat volunteers and respect volunteers for the tremendous amount of work and energy they put into their communities. The other thing that I think really reinforced right now to me, the Explorer programs and the seasonal program that Marin County Fire has. The seasonal program for Marin County is literally a sleeper program also. Some of those seasonal firefighters live at the fire station for their summer. And being a company officer and a battalion chief in Marin County, those seasonals, again, harkens back to my days at Terra Linda. It was like, this guy's going to make it. This guy's got the goods. Let's nurture this person just like I was nurtured by many folks along my career. Obviously, my history in the fire service had some ups and downs, and having mentors that literally, made a big difference. So as a company officer, I looked at mentoring some of our seasonals through a process, and I think it really behooves folks that start out young, get well mentored, and literally get a program or a key point program as to, if you want this profession, this is some of the things you need to be able to do, and go ahead and guide them in that respect.
I was 18 years old, going to College of Marin, studying liberal arts, which I was not interested in the least bit, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I learned I lived in Belvedere at the time, and learned that Tiburon Fire was having a sleeper program, which Chief Frank Busher, told me about, and it just sounded interesting, and I went, applied, and I was accepted, and I lived in the fire station, still going to College Marin.
Let me ask you, Larry, you went down to Tiburon and interviewed with Chief Busher, and he put you in the bunk room up there.
Yeah.
How long was it? How long were you a sleeper before you were offered another position?
I was there a year, or it would be almost a year.
Okay.
I started in January '61. In December, Clive left, and I was officially hired as a firefighter on December 15th. The paid man on duty we'd spend a lot of time in the evenings, afternoons, weekends, and he was showing me everything that he could. And I was very eager to learn. And as I mentioned, I started enrolling in a lot of classes, and then the College of Marin Fire Science program started.
Back in those days, did you have the ability to drive the fire apparatus yet, or was that strictly left to the paid person?
I was already that first 2 years, I definitely was a driver. Yes.
Okay.
And engineer. And as a matter of fact, I was after being in the Army for only a couple of months. I got a letter from Chief Frank saying the district board promoted me from firefighter to engineer. So I was really thrilled with that. I guess they wanted to kind of sweeten the deal for me coming back.
Sure.
Which I really intended to do that. And
Sure.
so I came back 2 years later as an engineer.
That was the downtown station in Tiburon.
Right.
And when did they build the station up on the highway,
Trestle Glen,
up on Trestle Glen? Yeah.
Trestle Glen and Paradise Drive. That was first in a rented garage just across the street, a couple hundred feet away from the existing station now, in somebody's rented garage.
Mhm.
And it's all volunteer. There's a siren, excuse me, there was a siren in the area up on a power pole, and it was activated to alert the volunteers. And there was another siren down at the bottom of Trestle Glen, Belvron area, on another power pole. So there's 2 sirens that alerted the volunteers.
So when you were back to your sleeper days, when you were a sleeper, were you the only other resident firefighters there, or were there a number of fellas in that dormitory with you?
There were a number. There were quite a few, including my younger brother, Bob,
Okay.
also moved in as a resident volunteer.
Okay.
There was about 3 or 4 of us.
You had a dormitory upstairs at the firehouse that the sleepers basically lived in.
Right.
And would you fellas all roll out together if there was an alarm? Would everybody jump on the apparatus and go with the paid guy, or were you assigned differently?
Okay, this is long before 911
Absolutely.
communication system, telephone system. So we had to keep one guy on the radio and take care of the hotline, as we called it, is designated a separate phone just for emergencies.
What I hear over and over again from fellows that were sleepers, resident firefighters back in the day, is the esprit de corps and the camaraderie that the fellows felt working together, living together. And what was your experience? Was it similar to that, Larry?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing I recognized right off the bat from the day I moved in. The camaraderie is just so neat, which I love.
You could rely on the guys that have your back, right?
Right.
Right. Absolutely. I think most of us would say the same thing. Their experience with the camaraderie of the folks you work with that closely is we develop some lifelong bonds. Wouldn't you agree?
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.